Hey folks, welcome to my 3 thoughts for October 17th, 2024. Let's go Broncos edition. I was thinking recently about YouTube Shorts as a format and why I don't really like them. First off, let me say, like everyone else, I have and I will continue to watch them on the platform. Because I am old and uncool, I can say honestly that I've never had a TikTok account, and for right or wrong, I am under the belief that TikTok is all videos in the shorter format akin to YouTube Shorts. From a business perspective, I can appreciate why you would want to create a format where actual content and an advertisement look identical. I haven't looked at YouTube's finances recently, but I'll be shocked if shorts aren't more effective in generating revenue in comparison to full-length videos. If they weren't, YouTube wouldn't have pushed them so far front and center in their platform. On a personal level, I guess, I don't like them as they just serve to generate emotion without context or lasting value. And ultimately, allowing someone to affect your emotions solely to generate a profit seems very unhealthy and exploitable. It is these types of things that really make me sad when I think about our social media. Just another system that benefits the few at the expense of the broader community. Do you think they're healthy? Do you think they have a value for us as viewers that I'm not seeing? Next, let's talk about news and journalism, what we perceive it to be and what it actually is. The public's perception of the job of a journalist is more or less something like this. A journalist is a person who will tell in an unbiased way the facts of a story or event. It is a journalist's job to disseminate information to the public. In reality, all journalists who rely on advertisements to make a living are in the business of getting your attention. Whether you or I learn anything from the article we have clicked on is not important. Once the advertisement is loaded on the page, the journey between the journalist and the reader is effectively completed. Now, this isn't to suggest that journalists, publishers, and writers in general don't have a vested interest in being trustworthy, but unfortunately many people will choose to take $20 today versus receiving $1 a week for 2 years. Initially, I thought this was a case of people chopping off their nose to spite their face, but now I think it's really 2 different factors. The first factor being that humans are, as a species, not inherently good at doing math. Put another way, I don't suspect that people in the example I used earlier truly understand how much money they're sacrificing for short-term reward. The second factor is likely a valid discounting of future due to inherent uncertainty. Let's modify my initial example and instead say you can either have $50 now or $1 a week over the next year. In this example, I suspect over 95% of people would take the $50 right now and would be correct in doing so. Taking this back to the news, if we truly want journalists to spend their time researching interesting articles or disseminating hard-to-understand, nuanced information to our communities, we need to create a better model than we have now. Maybe a model where we take a certain percentage of our tax dollars and put it towards journalism. Then anybody can go and try to get a grant to write a story. The idea being that we want journalists to have enough money so they can write the stories we need, not simply the stories that lead to clicks. Having said that, how an editorial process would work in this type of model is hard to understand. Ultimately, in this particular case, I'm not convinced that I know how to solve this problem. But I definitely do think that the disconnect between what we need of our news outlets and media more generally, and what we have is not long-term sustainable. In general, when we have a long-term gap between a customer's expectation and what is delivered becomes too large, the customer simply ceases to be a customer. Giving a real-world example, it is what happened to the large chains that were bled dry by venture capitalists in their never-ending and broken pursuit of generating infinitely more with less. In this case, I'll use Bed Bath & Beyond as my example, but the story is hardly unique. So the first time I went to a Bed Bath & Beyond, it was cheap and had a good selection of basics I needed to get my apartment up and running. Over time, it had less and less of what I needed, let alone what I wanted, and when it did, it was not at a price that I wanted to pay. Soon after, as a customer, I stopped even considering it as an option. Not long after that, the building became vacant. The alternative model that is often proposed, the subscriber model, is likely better than the current model in many ways. It does have the problem of forcing authors to conform to some degree to the audience's preconceived views. It at least doesn't have to chase immediate profitability and likely can support a person working on longer stories. What do you folks think? Are there even better alternatives? Are there any ways to improve the approaches already discussed? What approach can we take so that stories that are difficult to write are told and properly disseminated. The last topic today is public validation of our elections. Currently, I live in Colorado for better or worse. In Colorado, and I suspect many other states, there's no clear way to validate an election. Hell, in the last election, I wasn't even able to validate my own vote. The quote, validation screen, end quote, only told you that your vote was registered. You couldn't use it to validate, if your vote was recorded as you intended. I ask you this with all seriousness. If I can't even validate my own vote, how can I as a citizen validate an election's results? Let's walk through this for a second. Let's say we have two governments, one fully honest, the other fully corrupt. The fully honest one will report the election results accurately. The fully corrupt one will report results to its own benefit regardless of accuracy. Since a population can never prove if it's operating in a fully honest or a fully corrupt government, it must insist on an election process that can be validated directly by its citizens. The alternative is to allow a corruptible election process and live in a world where results can rightly be doubted, whether the results were reported accurately or not. The U.S. election's current approach to result verification and validation can be boiled down to, just trust me, bro, which is fundamentally unacceptable. What do you think? Is it important that we have elections where the results can be validated? Are there ways for the public to independently validate an election that I'm missing? Well, that's all I got for today. Until next time, may all your ghosts be goblins and all your ghouls be ghosts. Peace.